Dear students, REL 205, we're in our second week. I wanted to say that I've enjoyed reading through all your wonderful introductory posts, and most of you have already posted for week 1 discussion board, and be sure that you've done that and that you've responded to a classmate, because that's important. And both pieces get graded. So in week 1 you should have done an introduction, a post in response to the prompt that I gave you, and then also responded to a classmate. So 3 things in week 1. Week 2 you just have 2 items. You'll respond to a post, a prompt, and then respond to a classmate. So in week 1 we were thinking about how we come into the world, and we are, from before our birth, already being influenced by, it depends who our parents are biologically, what parents or adults are going to raise us, what communities we're born into, what kind of religious or secular spaces we're born into, our communities at large. It depends on certain kinds of demographics. For those of you studying sociology, paying attention to things like income and race and class, and all those things are pieced into who we are in the world and how we move in the world. So last week it was about, how are we born into these spaces, and then this second week I want us to start thinking about formations and coming of age, and how we push back against the environments we're born into to figure out who we are, and what kind of life we're going to live, and what kind of compromises or we might make, or what kind of growths or sacrifices we're willing to make to live as we're authentically made to live. And then we'll be approaching, of course, some other readings. So all the readings are posted. I hope that this week they are, there's no edges cut off of anything, but let me know if there is. The readings are required, and please watch, the videos that I post of me, giving you some direction and framework. The other videos, anything that's in blue, is supplemental. So if you have time, if you're interested, if it appeals to you, or if you think you might want to write more about something the video touches on, then please, avail yourself of those. But don't feel pressured if you don't have time. Stick to the readings, and that'd be great. So we're going to be reading from each week, actually, a very short piece just to kind of frame the week, from Eduardo Galeano, and I neglected to mention that last week, so I wanted you to see what that book looks like. This week we will be reading a piece by Amira Mittermeier, which is one of, I think is a really tremendous piece, about a Sufi Khidma in Egypt, and she's writing this as she's in Cairo, and Tahrir Square is really lit up while she's there, and then she's also spending time in this space of the Sufi Khidma. So I think you'll find there's some interesting things happening there, and she's talking about young revolutionaries and how they're thinking about the world. So I hope that appeals. Then also Stepmother at 17, which is from Janani's book. I think that piece is interesting because it's looking at a young woman who, in her own coming of age and at different seminal points in her own life, she is realizing things about her mother's life, and how her mother, as a young teenager, it turns out, took on a family at 17 and became a stepmother to these children who had lost their mother, and a husband who had lost his wife, and what that means. So she thinks about it as a young child when she finds out, she thinks about it as an adolescent, she thinks about it as an adult at different points in her own life. She reflects back on her mother's life. So I think it's a really nice piece for thinking about some of the themes of this class. And then in Black Roots to Islam, reading a piece, Constructing Masculinity, and intersections between Islam and African American youth, since Eric Lincoln's book, Black Muslims in America. So I did post a link to a really interesting debate, conversation. It's a little heated for a conversation maybe, which has, I mean, James Baldwin, C. Eric Lincoln, Malcolm X, and then George Schuyler. So I would, you know, if you have time, I would take a listen to that. One caution I would make is that when the Malcolm X you're listening to is Malcolm X, who is invested in Nation of Islam. He has not yet gone to Mecca. He has not yet gone through the changes that will shift his thinking and draw him closer to a traditional Sunni Islam. So you're getting a specific slice, and we can talk more about that, or you can write me if you have any questions about what that means. And then the last piece is from Genocide of the Mind, and that's a piece looking at through the thoughts of a young man who's working in a museum where he is in charge of and watching people in charge of and making decisions about artifacts from a community which is a community that he belongs to and has connections to, and he's thinking sort of as a insider, outsider. He's wearing a lot of different caps, identity. He has different identity connections, and he's thinking about what those pieces mean to him, what they might mean to other people in other communities, and how they're being viewed in this museum space. And to connect with that, I also posted a video by the young comedic team, the 1491s. 1491, of course, represents before contact, saying, hey, you know, we did not gain an identity or become something because of the Europeans. We had an extant culture, but they're quite funny, and their piece is called The Indian Store. So if you are drawn to that, I would say take a listen. And I will probably post another piece, a short video in response once I've read all the discussion boards and responses and get those graded. I'll post something just to let you know what highlights there were, if there's anything I think we should pay more attention to. And I think that's it for now. So goodbye from Greensboro.